Welcome to the Post Ride Podcast. Lee Conn, Ryan Lowis, and myself discuss our amazing motorcycle trip through Spain in late October and early November 2022. This is episode 5. It is the morning of November the 2nd. We are in Biarritz, France. You want to go see the lighthouse?
The lighthouse was quite beautiful. The view over Biarritz was quite nice there, wasn't it? We could have just about walked over to the lighthouse, but it's time to go.
Riding down the main street here to downtown, they're having a surf competition. Biarritz is one of the places you can surf in Europe. They had an inflatable sign here, and guys were out there surfing, and they were announcing it. That was pretty cool. We rode around the aquarium out on this point.
You may want to just zoom out philosophically, because remember, we had a whole change of plans here.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I did have an opinion. I had a weather strategy and a France strategy, and that was pretty apparent, I'm sure. I do enjoy France. Looking at the opportunity to spend 2 or 3 nights in France, I was all gung-ho, and I made my case, but I was overruled.
What we were talking about was we had weather that we were trying to contend with, and we were going to be in the Pyrenees Mountains, and we wanted to spend time in the Pyrenees riding. We wanted to get to Andorra originally. Lee had booked a place in Andorra, which is a micro country over here between France and Spain and the Pyrenees. This is like skiing kind of elevation with snow. The moisture would come through, it was going to get colder, it was going to snow. Lee had like jeans. I don't think he really brought anything other than jeans to wear. Ryan's idea was that we would go more on the French side of the Pyrenees, which would have been killer, and then end up on the coast over here, and then the next day go into Barcelona. You were still having to make some sort of crossing. That was the concern. We debated it heatedly. It's probably our only heated discussion on the whole trip was, should we go this way or should we go this way?
There were no losers in this case. The scenery we saw, I wouldn't want to unsee that. Coming down through the Pyrenees, I'll never forget that mountain range. The one-lane road with the wild boars and the tourists up there. It was really just us and a couple other people.
Go earlier in the season and spend more time just going back and forth all through the Pyrenees. There's so much to see here, so many incredible roads. Spend some time in France, spend some time in Spain, but you could just play all in this area probably for a week.
I think, Ryan, your heart was in the right place, but the snow was just coming in on us. I think luckily we did make that choice. I think we found later that Andorra was under snow. All those places were under snow, and we could have been trapped up there because some of those elevations were in the 7,000 feet. We had more decisions to make that day as well, right? Like, how far were we really going to go? And was it going to turn into just one night in Barcelona where we just fly in at the dark, or is it going to turn into 2 nights? What was really going to happen there? The coolest thing about the trip was how little we had planned. We had the first couple of nights in Madrid. We had 2 nights in Valencia for the GP. And then we had 2 nights at the end or 1 night at the end in Madrid to fly away. So that was the coolest part about the whole thing, was we could change everything on the fly, basically, which is exactly what we did, was just instead of doing what we all wanted to do, and Ryan was making such a good case for, once the snow started coming, we really shifted everything. I love that kind of stuff. We went down to Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, which I think you had been before, and that was turned into a pretty cool stop.
Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, it's in France. It's very famous because this is where you start the Camino de Santiago on the French side, and then you hike over the Pyrenees into Spain. Carol and I did that a couple of years ago, and it was just really one of my favorite vacations. It was wild to go back there, to ride there. We rode out of Biarritz and took a different route, and we ended up in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, had a coffee, then we walked through town a little bit. Do you remember those little caramel things that we got? They're like tiny little sweet things.
I've got a great shot of those as we grab them. The thing I remember is the baguette vending machine.
Yeah.
My baguette. A couple euros, pops a baguette.
That's right. And I was doing anything I could to buy Ryan a beret, but he wouldn't go for it because I was trying to get that other hat that he had away from him, and I think he's still probably wearing it.
The hat needs to be burned.
It's been retired.
We hung out in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port for a little bit, but we need to get going. This was some of the most beautiful riding. It was definitely one of the best riding days that we had. It wasn't probably the best. I think there were maybe a couple others that were ties, but it was absolutely gorgeous. The other thing, too, was we were outside of tourist season. It wasn't crowded. The roads were empty. That was what kind of was super exciting. The corollary to that is that things were closing down too. It was not tourist season anymore. So people were shutting down for the winter.
We rode from Saint Jean Pied de Port, heading towards a place called Aribe. That road between there, we got into some pretty high elevation. You're right, there was nobody up there. The road was just spectacular and huge skies and all kinds of just wildlife everywhere. It was just so beautiful there. I've got a couple of pictures from Aribe, which was just a small little town. And that became an interesting point because we had to figure out how hard we wanted that day. You know, was that going to be 150 miles? Was that going to be 200, 300 miles? There was a moment there where we looked at each other and we're like, man, we didn't really plan on this, but we could make it all the way to Barcelona because we wanted to get there. And once we realized the Pyrenees are shot, the snow's coming in, that was a moment where we could have gotten really greedy and said, man, we're going to go all the way to Barcelona, or we could just blast around on a little bit on the south side there where the weather was still good. And I'm glad we did it the way we did because we ended up riding that day. Rode for 6 hours. I think we rode 221 miles. Some of it was like some pretty intense and pretty fast stuff.
That was a mix of stuff. The beginning in the morning was with lots of twisty roads. The trees were starting to change colors. I remember that really dramatically. Then we got up, went around some serious windy roads to get up to the top through the forest. Then you pop out on top. It's like a hunting lodge or something on top of the mountain. It was really windswept. We stopped there and there were people there and these guys came out with their guns. I think it was the first time we'd seen people with weapons. Ryan was excited. We loitered there for a little bit and then went a little further and only saw a handful of cars. The road got down to a single lane. And it was just this little strip of concrete over the top of the summits going through there, which was exactly what I wanted. I wanted to see some of that kind of thing. Once we got on the other side, we started riding down through here. We're in Basque country. We had the Basque names and the Spanish names and the French names. Everything's got multiple names depending on which side of the border it's on, whether it's France or Spain. It's got a Basque name and a French name or a Basque name and a Spanish name. This little town right here, which is Nowheresville, we were hungry. It was empty. There was like one little market that was open, barely. We went in that place. We got that weird chocolate that Lee couldn't stand. We got some meat. We basically were in scavenger mode. We just grabbed what we could and got some fruit, and there was a table and grass area outside of the place. We had a picnic. That was awesome.
Those are the magical moments of traveling in that kind of way. Hey, there's no restaurant. Let's go buy some she's got in this tiny little market and put together a cool little picnic. I was getting so blood sugary right then. We were getting a little desperate. And man, that just sitting out on a little picnic bench and just eating all that random weird stuff. That was amazing. That was just such a cool moment. Just one of those unscripted, hey, she spoke literally zero English. We didn't know what half that stuff was we were buying. But man, it turned out perfect. I had a little pocket knife and we just carved it up and ate it. That was awesome.
Brian, I was going to say in that town, it was the only place we really had to stop for road construction. They were putting in a speed bump or something. They're cracking up because there's this tiny little road crew in the middle of nowhere and putting in an asphalt speed bump in town.
We broke it in for them a little bit there. Literally brand new.
Even though we were out in the middle of nowhere in the Pyrenees, the roads were perfect. Just perfect asphalt.
We rode on the side of a mountain. We twirled our way up to the peak there. And then we crested that. We found the hunters that we were talking about earlier and rode back down and just had crisscrossed right over the top of the Pyrenees, right back down to Spain. So I knew at the time I would be remembering that for a while to come. So I was just trying to soak it in.
I was low on gas. The XR kept pretty good pace with the GS in terms of gas mileage. It was just a little less, but it was enough to where we had to stop. Not a lot of stuff was open, so we were lucky and we found a gas station back in the Pyrenees, and that tanked us up, and then we were able to get out of the Pyrenees and back more into where there's more population. You can see the Pyrenees off to the left and some of the big peaks and things.
You know, what was nice, and we were learning too, was that like all the traffic cameras, those were all more in the main highways and in the cities. Once you got out, that kind of fear of that kind of thing went away, and there were so few other cars that seemed like we could go basically the speed we felt comfortable at without a lot of worrying.
By the way, have your speed camera, have your tickets come yet, gentlemen?
None. Hopefully,
We'll
it's one of
see.
those things where Lee and I triggered the cameras, and because you were dragging behind us because you thought you were going to get hit, that you get the ticket. So they just get lazy and give it to you.
That was an awesome day. We rode a lot and we saw things. You're right, man. When we were up in the Pyrenees, the level of beauty per mile was extreme. That's one of the things I think all three of us were looking forward to, was riding through the Pyrenees. And I think we all wanted to do a little more of that. We got a nice day of riding in. Maybe an hour or two before we got to the hotel in Lleida, there was some deserty kind of stuff. We were doing some pretty high speed riding through with big fourth and fifth gear sweepers. There was just nobody out there. And we were just flying through some of those parts. It wasn't the most exciting terrain, but the roads were just wide open and beautiful. And that was where the speeds were. We picked up a little bit. We made this decision to go to this Lleida, which was definitely not on one of the top places we want to go to, but we found a cool hotel and we just needed to get there before it got much darker. I was getting pretty pooped out, I think, towards the end of that day.
I was advocating for let's push it into Barcelona, which on the map doesn't look that far, really wasn't that far. We were pooped. There's a big castle there, some other things, but there was quite a bit of traffic. In Spain, there's not much traffic. It was more traffic than we'd encountered. It was dark. I was tired. I was like, let's get to that hotel, which it turned out to be a killer hotel that you found.
Hotel was nice. Town was actually cool. I think what we did at that point was one of our faux pas around eating. We found a tapas restaurant with a super high rating. I remember walking up and I was like, are you guys closed? And they were like, yeah, no, we haven't even opened yet. Remember, we were the first guys in there. We were the first guys in there, starting to realize, yeah, everything doesn't really get going till 9. I think we showed up at 8 or 8:30, and we were basically the first guys in there. But we ate pretty hard in there, if I remember right. We had some pretty good tapas in there. And then by the time we were leaving at 9:30, the place was packed out. Kids, families, everything.
We stayed at that awesome hotel in Lleida. Do you remember what it's called?
Mirador de Lleida.
It was a little more gritty, I think. I may not sketchy, but it was a little more gritty in Lleida. It wasn't a tourist town, so to speak. It was a university town, but not a tourist town. I don't think anybody would go there except for us. Because we needed a place to stay, kind of thing. It wasn't necessarily where you need to.
I bleeded. I said France.
Yeah, you did.
It was a very
you did.
Pretty town.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. It was just a gritty little town. Another amazing day of riding in Spain, from Biarritz to Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, through the Pyrenees, through some small little towns. Incredible fun picnic, and in the Lleida, where we got some much needed rest. We've got lots more coming. We're going to head into Barcelona tomorrow. Come back for the next episode. It's going to be a good one. Thanks.